right wing or left wing?
I really like buffalo wings.
Hi, and welcome back to Through the Muck and the Mire. I'm your host, David Hollifield. Tonight, we're going to be talking about impeachment and a little bit of insurrection as well. So I want to start off by showing a couple of my sources on these things, because a lot of this is me repeating information that I've heard or learned from other people that are much smarter than me, and kind of just building off of that. You know, does that make logical sense to me? And have I seen other evidence that supports it, basically? So anyway, Supreme Myths is a podcast by the distinguished constitutional law professor at Georgia State University, and Passing Judgment is his name is Professor Eric Siegel. And then Passing Judgment is by Jessica Levinson, and she specializes in election law at Loyola Law School. Now, in particular, the Supreme Myths episode that talks about this current impeachment also had a guest on, which is Keith Whittington from Princeton, and he's a professor of politics. He's also been, I can't remember exactly what it was called, like a visiting professor of law or something like that. But he's also worked at Harvard and other law schools as well. And then in their episode, when they talked about it, they brought up Bruce Ackerman, who is a Yale law professor, and he actually disagrees with them. So he wrote an opinion piece. I think it was with like the Washington Post. I can't remember. You can just Google Bruce Ackerman impeachment and the article will pop up. But he actually says that you can't impeach a president after they leave office. They make the case that you can. And I personally agree with them. There's plenty of evidence behind it, and to me it makes logical sense. First off, the evidence behind it is that it's literally happened before, not to a president, but to the war secretary, William Belknap, I think it was 1876. He was just like a super corrupt war secretary that was like embezzling money or doing something corrupt out at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is where I went through basic training. I can't remember the exact details of it, but basically he was like partying, living a lavish lifestyle, and people were questioning him like, how is he able to afford all this crap? And then come to find out he was corrupt. And the House was going to vote on impeachment against him, and he immediately went to the president and handed him his resignation to avoid impeachment. And impeachment, along with him being removed from office, impeachment also has repercussions that go along with it, and that includes not being able to run for office in the future. And I believe this, you also can't get certain benefits that come along with it, like a federal tax funded pension, which I hope we all agree that somebody that has done something bad enough to be impeached doesn't deserve to have our taxpayer money funding their pension. I don't even know if any politician, in my opinion, actually deserves a taxpayer pension for the rest of their life. There's a lot of stuff that I think could be changed. But anyways, I digress. Under impeachment, you don't only get removed from office, you also lose your benefits to run for office again or to be appointed to any position again in the future, and you lose your whatever federal benefits that go along with that. So it's been done. It's already been done. He didn't actually get convicted by the Senate, which it's, just because Donald Trump can get convicted by the Senate right now doesn't mean that he will. It takes a 2/3 vote, which is a pretty high bar. Pretty high. I think it's like 17. He's going to need every Democrat, obviously, in the Senate is going to vote for it. That's a no-brainer. But then on top of that, he's going to need at least, I think, 17 Republican senators as well to vote for it, which who knows if that's actually going to happen. So, but I think that there definitely will be a trial for impeachment in the Senate. So, beside the fact that we have done it, just because the government has done something doesn't mean that it was necessarily constitutional. I think that there's a lot of things that our government has done and still do that are unconstitutional. So I think that that's a fair, valid point to say, oh, well, just because it's been done in the past doesn't mean that it was right. That's fair. What I would say to that is, if we also look at history also supports it. There's a quote by John Adams that he said on the House floor. Basically, I'm going to summarize, said that I am amenable to impeachment. He was the second president of the United States, by the way. I'm amenable to impeachment until the last breath that I breathe, or, something about that, for anything that I've done while I hold the office of president. He also is one of the people that helped write the Constitution, which is where we find the impeachment clause. So I think it's fair to say that if that wasn't an actual thing that could be done, then John Adams, the second president of the United States, probably wouldn't have said that on the House floor, or else they would have laughed at him. And he would look like a complete idiot. Now, when they were drafting the Constitution, they pulled a lot of things, obviously, from England, from the parliamentary government in England, because that's where they came from. That's what they knew. And they did a lot of this stuff also within the colonies, which, they kind of had to establish their own policies and stuff for the colonies. They didn't just do everything that England did. They had, they had to come up with their own things. They already had common law in the colonies. And impeachment was one of those things. And they actually did limit it to an extent from what England did. They tried to limit it to the president and certain officials in office. Impeachment is not just something that can happen to anybody. So they did limit it in that aspect. But they but they carried on that, the term of high crimes and misdemeanors from England. Because at first, I think it only actually was like treason and bribery were the only two things in the Constitutional Convention that were going to fall under impeachable offenses. But I can't remember exactly who it was, said that doesn't cover nearly enough of, the terrible things that a president could do in office that, justifies an impeachment. But they didn't want it to be too expansive, so they limited it to high crimes and misdemeanors. But at the time, high crimes and other misdemeanors included things that weren't statutory criminal laws. That could just be like a public offense, such as inciting an insurrection, which actually incitement is also actually a statutory criminal law in the United States in different aspects. So even if you couldn't impeach for something that's not a criminal law, incitement is a criminal law in the United States. So it doesn't even matter. Sorry if I'm looking down, I'm just referring to the notes that I've been taking. The last thing that I want to say is that state constitutions actually also explicitly allow impeachment of an official after they've left office or been, after they've resigned or whatever. So I don't know. I think that further kind of just proves the point that it's always been understood that way. All right. So now for the sake of the argument, we're just going to assume that everything that I've said is true. Now you have the question of, is he actually guilty of incitement? Ultimately, this is going to be up to, the Senate to try after a full trial. Like, he's going to get representation and he's going to have a chance to defend himself. They have to be able to prove that he is guilty of incitement. So what does that mean? There are 3 requirements for incitement. I'm going to pick up my book for a second. The 3 requirements are: 1, advocacy that intended to spur lawlessness; 2, encourage lawbreaking, which must be imminent, meaning like immediate, and that they knew that it was likely to cause imminent lawbreaking. So basically just tying the first 2 together. That they did it caused lawbreaking, and they knew that it would cause lawbreaking when they said it. There's plenty of arguments that can be made for that. Is it guaranteed that he's going to get impeached for it? Absolutely not, especially because most of Congress pretty much votes party lines these days. And also, they have a stake in the game. If Donald Trump can be held liable for this, then so can some of these Republican senators. So they're, Cruz in particular, he's not going to vote yes on this because he has supported Donald Trump in most of this crap. So if Donald Trump is guilty of it, then Ted Cruz might be as well. Likelihood of him voting for an impeachment because of that alone, it's highly unlikely in my opinion. But likely to cause imminent law breaking. That one to me is pretty obvious. That's the third requirement. It just ties all of them together. And the reason I say that is because every time Donald Trump says something, his fan base and like the QAnon supporters, but even regular Donald Trump supporters that aren't necessarily crazy right-wing conspiracy nuts, will say, that's not what he meant. This is what he meant. So they had, like, all these people interpret all these things that Donald Trump says. It doesn't mean it's not what he actually said. This is what he actually said. And they just try to fit it to whatever, their worldview is, their confirmation biases at the time. So he didn't specifically say, let's go burn down the Capitol. Let's go break down and, invade the Capitol. Let's go, I don't know, whatever. He didn't say any of those things. He said, like, let's go march on the Capitol. And he basically insinuated that he was going with him, like, we're going to march on the Capitol, whatever. And at the same time, fanning these flames of, Mike Pence needs to do the right thing and have courage and overturn these electoral votes. Dominion has changed millions of votes. There's all this different fraud and all this crap like that. So you're telling your base, your fan base, these people that you're telling to go march on the Capitol, these people that also happen to just, I'm somebody that loves guns, but that's these people. They're like the rule of law, the Constitution, patriotism. They think that their country is being stolen from them. And anybody can understand that those people that invent whatever the hell they want Donald Trump to say, they just say it. Oh, well, that's not what he meant. He meant this because this is what I feel like he said. Or this is a reasonable thing that I can tell people that's what Donald Trump said. Why wouldn't they say, oh, well, what he's really telling us to do is go march on the Capitol so that we can take our country back? Because that's what they think that they're doing. They think they're patriots. They think that they're marching on the Capitol because Donald Trump is being, wrongfully kept from his second term as president. And they're going to save the nation from communists and socialists and whatever. So just saying, there's definitely an argument for it. There is also an argument for saying, like, he didn't literally incite it. It's taken out of context. That's not what he meant, whatever. There's an argument on both sides for sure. And the Republicans are definitely not going to agree with the incitement argument, I don't think. And that's, one of the issues is that there's a 2/3 vote. It's like a supermajority. It's not just any majority. It has to be supermajority, 2/3 vote. And that is different from the 14th Amendment. That's actually wholly different from the 14th Amendment because there's no process laid out for the 14th Amendment, actually. And that's an issue for Bruce Ackerman, who I mentioned earlier, who's the Yale law professor, that said that impeachment is not possible or legal or whatever. He said we should focus on the 14th Amendment. But a problem that we have there is that there's no guaranteed trial for it, first off. There's no definition of insurrection either. We don't know, like, what does that mean? We have to have a reference for what is insurrection. Do they get a trial? And can you develop the evidence that's going to be needed to prove, whatever standard of insurrection that you decide? There's basically just, we don't have a system for that right now. So all of that would have to be created before you could even try to use the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And it's basically, never even been tried to be used since it was invented. It was just invented as a reaction to the Civil War. And one thing that I always say is, like, never fight to hold a power, at least like in American politics, I think it's probably just in general probably a good idea. Never fight to have a power that you wouldn't want your opposition to have. Something that if it was in their hands, you would fear that they would abuse it against you. Then you probably shouldn't have that either, because they are fearful of the same thing, and it just opens up the field for that. So, I guess the point of me saying that is like making a too low of a standard for what incitement is or insurrection is, could possibly be, one of those things that could be abused by the other side once they take power. And that's also what I felt like about the first impeachment. Quid pro quo is something that every single politician is guilty of. Like tit for tat, like I scratch your back, you scratch mine. That's all politics. Like that's how they get things done. It's business basically. So if they had impeached Donald Trump for quid pro quo, they'd set the precedent for the Republican Party to impeach every single Democrat as well, and the Democrats to impeach every single Republican as well that ever, gets a favor for a favor. And that's a pretty terrible precedent to set. I don't think that's a road that we want to go down. Now, this current impeachment, I think, is wholly different from that, completely separate. There's, if the Senate, with, needing at least 17 votes from Republicans to even convict, that's not setting the same precedent as, a quid pro quo thing. Not everybody is guilty. Not every politician is guilty of inciting an insurrection or inciting an angry mob of, storming the Capitol to try to stop a democratic election process. So I think that this is different. Anyways, I'm going to just kind of sum that up real quick. Can the House impeach? It doesn't matter because they already did, and they did it before Joe Biden even was inaugurated. So they already started the process. Can the Senate still do it? Probably. It's been done in the past, and there's plenty of history and context and precedent for it to be supported. Mitch McConnell has already said that he hasn't ruled it out, so obviously he doesn't think it's completely, out of reality to do it. Will it be successful? I don't know. All I can do is guess. I want to say probably not, for the reasons that I stated before. One, 1 and 2 are the same thing basically, but it's going to require a lot of Republicans to sign on to it. And 2, a lot of Republicans are also guilty of doing the same crap that Donald Trump did and fanning these flames that got these people to storm the Capitol in the first place. So they might, in saying that Donald Trump is guilty of it, be putting themselves at risk of being, removed from office as well. And then as far as the 14th Amendment being used, there's literally not even a process to do it yet. So, it's been around for over 200 years. So that's probably not going to happen. But I do, it does make sense to me that it would be used. It's just that we don't have a standard or, a method to do it with. Do I personally think that he should be impeached? Absolutely. I think that this time he should be impeached. Last time was all partisan politics crap, but this time he was literally a tyrant and was treasonous and was trying to overthrow a democratic election without actually providing evidence of what he says was this massive election fraud through the Dominion voting system. And, basically everything that they brought up as, alleged massive voter fraud was debunked, or there was just no evidence of it in the first place. and they still have not done it. And the people that believe that crap still actually think that Donald Trump is in control right now. Like, they're telling people it's not over yet. So, I mean, that just kind of tells you how delusional they are in the first place. But yeah, I think that he is guilty of inciting the mob that stormed the Capitol. And, you know, even if this wasn't the thing that he got impeached for, there's other things that he could be impeached for too. I believe, like the phone call to Brad Raffensperger in Georgia. Yeah. The insurrection thing under the 14th Amendment, not so much. But anyways, that's all I got for you. You know, feel free to disagree with me. Drop some links, drop some sources for me to look into in the comment section, and I'll be glad to look into them. And, you know, if I find of anything of value, I will gladly make another video. You know, change my mind, please. Thanks, and have a good night.